You had a previous situation where fisheries was marginalized, was being part of agriculture for a long time. Policy direction wasn't very, very good. Now, instantly, you have a separate ministry appointed for the sector. You've had a situation where the legislation has been outmoded since 2002, hasn't been done, and instantly you have a new legislative framework being put in place with high-powered executive support for the process, cabinet support, executive presidential support for the process. To me, that is fundamental. You need that high-level political commitment to actually make a change. The most important thing to me is, one, the industry part of it. Fisheries is fundamental to Ghana's economy. It employs about 10% of the Ghanaian population. Food security provides 60% of the protein, generates $1 billion in revenue. And instantly, when industry realized that the exports to Europe were being blockaded, I mean, they run a real chance of basically sacking all their employees. And people were beginning to say, look, it's going to be a major disaster. Well, industry actually had the awareness before even the government. They were running ahead of government because they were actually suffering the economic pain. Their products were blockaded. Several millions of exports were being locked up. Some of them were returned, and they have to actually pay for the return. Some of them couldn't continue operating their vessels. So it was industry actually that came to government and said, hey, we have a problem, and we think you got to actually help us solve it, and we're part of that solution. So. The 1 million minimum that is imposed now, for many of the small operators, that would send them, broke. But it's a penalty you pay. It also signals to other members, the good law-abiding people. It's not every part of industry which actually does a bad thing. And so the rest of industry are now beginning to target the small, the minority and say, hey, you are causing all of us to have a problem. So by coming together collectively and drawing attention to these issues, as I said, industry is developing their own code of conduct. For IUU, if you commit IUU, you get out of the membership of our association, and then we lobby you don't get a license. You are a discredit to industry. Yeah. The EU is attractive for many of the ACP countries for Ghana, largely because of the framework set up under the Cotonou Agreement, which allows quota-free, duty-free access into the European market of products originating from the ACP countries. So if you take fisheries products, once it's being caught in the Ghanaian exclusive economic zone under certain rules of origin requirement, but particularly processed in a Ghanaian processing plant, it's made in Ghana, it becomes a duty-free, quota-free product. No other market in the world offers this advantage. And so historically, since independence, the countries have relied on that. It's not easy overnight going to find an alternative market. I see two fundamental issues. One, eventually every fish caught at sea has to land somewhere. So if you have good controls on entry into port and verification at port, then you're going to address part of the problem. Two, the fish is exported, and big-time IUU fishers want to make money in the international market. If you have your market controls, then you're going to address the problem. That's why I see the IUU regulation as really fundamental as a market measure, but that process has to be replicated globally. to avoid the possibility of some loophole in the system, other markets opening up. If you have a global consensus and a global framework on this trade controls and postage controls, then you're going to address the problem. Yeah. And rather than just series of documentation, look, everybody has plan of action on IUU. You go and see what is being implemented, nothing is being done. Everybody has some form of legislation unless it is implemented. So key is implementation.